Dear friends, we share the most exciting stories. Subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for amazing adventures. "Laura, let's talk," said Michael, not lifting his eyes. His voice sounded dull, as if he didn't believe himself. "I love another woman." "I'm sorry," she stood by the sink. The cup squeaked under the sponge in her hands. For a few seconds, Laura was silent, then calmly rinsed the dishes, carefully placed the cup on the rack, and wiped her hands with a waffle towel. Her movements were measured, almost meditative. Only then, without any tension, did she turn to him. "All right. If you love her, go no tears, no drama, just simple words." As if it wasn't the collapse of a life, but an ordinary household conversation. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said quietly, looking at her face with guilt, as if for the first time seeing how much weariness it held. "Then don't. Just leave with dignity." Her voice was calm, even too calm, without hesitation, without strain. He felt something twist inside, not from guilt, but from shame, as if his soul had been scraped with a spoon, and he was afraid to look inside. She walked to the table, poured herself strong tea into a large ceramic mug with a chipped edge, sat across from him without looking at him. "We've been together so many years," she began without raising her voice. "Our son's grown up. We built this house. We did everything together. You worked, I supported you. There were hardships, joys. It all wasn't for nothing." He sat in silence, shoulders lowered. "You can take the house. I don't need anything," she finally said, "except for one thing." She took a sip of tea, set the mug on a coaster, and continued, looking him straight in the eyes. "My mother's anniversary is next month. 70 years. She loves you like her own son. I don't want her to know about the divorce. Do me one favor. Stay this month. No scenes, no coldness, just family. Smile at the table, bring her favorite pastries, help with the samovar, and then go. I won't hold you. Just don't ruin her celebration." Michael nodded. He hadn't expected such a reaction. He had gone into this conversation like to an execution, prepared for tears, shouting, flying dishes, and received silence, calm, and a request. A last one, but so human that it became unbearable. "You've already decided everything?" she asked quietly. "Yes," he said. "Not today," he added after a pause. "But inside, probably long ago," she said softly. She took the mug again, warming her fingers on the ceramic. Outside, a rare May rain was falling. The drops tapped on the windowsill like the metronome of a love that had run its course. The next month passed in a strange, almost tangible state, as if time itself had frozen in hesitation. Laura remained as attentive and pleasant as ever. When friends visited, she joked, laughed, kept the conversations going, filling the house with warmth and lightness. But when the guests left, she would sink into her thoughts. In the evenings, she sat by the window, staring at the dark outlines of trees beyond the glass. Silence wrapped around her like a cloak. She didn't cry, didn't complain, just sat quietly, and in that silence there was something deep, almost solemn, as if she was speaking to someone invisible. Michael more and more often found himself unwilling to pick up the phone to call the other woman. Her voice, her endless complaints and whims, once charming, now irritated him like static noise. He couldn't pinpoint when it began. Maybe when she once again demanded attention he no longer wanted to give, or when her calls started to feel unnecessary, like interference in a radio signal. While at home was different, calm, familiar, reliable, as if he'd returned to a place where everything was in its place, where he didn't need to pretend or prove anything. He started bringing flowers home, not out of habit, but from some inner impulse. At first, modest daisies, later lush roses that Laura had loved in her youth. She accepted them without words, only slightly smiling as she placed the flowers in a vase. Her hands moved with habitual grace, but her eyes were different, thoughtful, deep, as if she wanted to capture every moment. She cooked his favorite dishes, meat with potatoes like his mother used to make, or that same apple pie he could never refuse. Sometimes she looked at him longer than usual, as though trying to memorize every line of his face, every wrinkle that had appeared over the years. "You look good," he said once at dinner, gazing at her across the table lit by the soft glow of a lamp. "Thank you," Laura replied, a faint smile on her lips. "Just don't look too close. My face will soon go mad from tiredness." He laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in a long while. A warm laugh that filled his chest. It felt like a bridge had appeared between them, connecting them to those days when they could talk about anything in the world without fear of being misunderstood. Laura looked at him with mild surprise, but there was genuine joy in her eyes, quickly replaced by that same quiet thoughtfulness. She set her spoon aside, propped her chin on her hand, and looked out the window again, where branches swayed in the dark. Michael suddenly felt a sting of remorse for not noticing before how beautifully she could be silent, how her presence filled the house with something greater than mere habit. Then came the long-awaited day of her mother's anniversary. Preparation had taken weeks, but everything went perfectly like a symphony. The house was decorated with such care that every corner seemed to radiate warmth and festivity. Strings of lights twinkled softly. Bouquets of peonies, her mother's favorites, graced the table. The air was filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and homemade pastries that Laura had baked all night. Guests filled the living room, relatives, old friends, neighbors, everyone who knew her mother as a kind, wise woman who always offered both help and a comforting word. Congratulations flowed endlessly. Toasts were followed by sincere laughter. The air was thick with joy, the rare, true kind when everyone feels part of something greater. Michael, standing at the head of the table with a glass of champagne, spoke. He was never one for public speeches, but the words came easily this time. His speech made everyone's hearts ache. Looking at his mother-in-law sitting in the spotlight, smiling softly, eyes glistening, he called her his second mother. His voice was filled with genuine warmth and gratitude. He recalled how she had always been there during hard times, how she taught him to cook her famous borscht, how she encouraged him when work went badly, how a single phrase of hers could lift his spirits. "You're not just a mother-in-law to us," he said, his voice trembling. "You are the soul of our family, the one who makes us all better. Thank you for everything." Applause broke out. The usually composed woman couldn't hold back tears. Her eyes, brimming with gratitude and love, sparkled under the chandelier. She rose to hug Michael, drew him close, and whispered in his ear, "Laura is your happiness, my son. Don't lose her. A wife like that comes once in a lifetime." Her words struck Michael like lightning. He froze, unable to reply, only nodding, feeling as though someone had turned a key in a long-rusted lock inside him. It wasn't just a passing emotion. It was the moment he suddenly understood, truly, that Laura, with her quiet strength and her gift for creating comfort even in dark times, was the one who had kept his life in balance. He remembered how that morning she had straightened the tablecloth, smiled at the guests despite her exhaustion, and quietly ensured everyone felt at home. And in that moment, the image of the other woman, the one who had seemed so important just recently, began to fade like a mirage. He looked over at Laura, who stood nearby adjusting flowers in a vase. She looked tired, but beautiful, with that kind of beauty that doesn't shout for attention but unfolds slowly over years. Her movements were soft, almost weightless, filled with the care she gave to everyone around her. He realized he'd never truly seen her before, or perhaps had refused to. His mother-in-law's words echoed in his mind, and every time he looked at Laura, warmth mixed with guilt spread through his chest. He remembered how, in recent weeks, she had cooked his favorite meals, quietly accepted his bouquets, looked at him with that same distant tenderness, as if saying goodbye. The thought pierced him deeper than he expected. The celebration went on, but Michael was no longer fully present. He watched Laura, laughing at an old friend's joke, pouring tea for her mother, hugging a niece who had come from afar. It was all so familiar, so dear, that he suddenly felt fear of losing it forever. His mother-in-law, still wiping her tears, smiled at him across the table. There was something in her gaze he couldn't decipher. A warning, perhaps, or hope. "What are you thinking about?" Laura asked softly, approaching with a glass of wine. "Oh, nothing," he stammered, trying to hide his confusion. "It's just, you really look beautiful today." She looked at him with mild surprise, but said nothing, only smiled faintly and walked back to the guests. Michael stood there, holding his empty glass, feeling something shift inside him, as if a veil had begun to lift from his eyes. For the first time in a long while, he saw Laura not just as his wife, but as the woman he had once loved so fiercely he couldn't imagine life without her. And perhaps still did. The next morning, Michael woke up alone. On the table lay a note. Went out on errands. Back in the evening, love Elle. He couldn't wait for evening. He wanted to hug her, to say, "Forgive me. You are my home. I want to start over." But Laura didn't come back that evening, nor the next morning. By noon, the hospital called. "Are you Michael Polozov? Your wife has been admitted." He stood there, phone in hand, not believing. His world collapsed. It turned out she had known. She knew she was leaving, and said nothing, so he wouldn't feel guilty. Everyone came to the funeral. Colleagues, neighbors, friends. Even his own mother wept, clutching her daughter-in-law's photograph to her chest. Michael sat on the bench outside their house, looking up at the sky and whispering, "I didn't make it in time, Laura. Forgive me. You were everything, and I understood it only when nothing could be changed."